Hey, good morning, everybody. Sorry for the early start, but thunderstorms are rolling in, and I wanted to get this show up for you guys today. Those of you that missed it because it's so early, you just have to watch it through, apparently. You could probably hear the thunder in the background. Here's the AccuWeather forecast. We got some big, look at all this coming toward north central Arkansas. And I'm like right in here. Let's play some of this through. Look at this. All that red is just torrential rainfall and thunderstorms. And I can already hear the thunder grumbling. So hopefully we'll be able to get through the show today. I also want to make sure that we're okay in terms of our buffering, because we were having issues with buffering, weren't we? And so I want to make sure that we're good on that as well. Kind of a little bit of a test show, I guess you can call it as well. And this is actually a very important show today, because we're also going to get into the bird box, which is the bird vocal box. Now, what most people don't realize is that birds have a vocal organ called a syrinx. It acts as a bird box. And I remembered that 4 years ago, we decoded the movie Bird Box. And when I went back to look at this movie, I could not believe what I was seeing. Let me see if we're connected. Is there any buffering or anything, you guys? Just to be sure before we move on. Okay, vision and sound is good. I just want to make sure that all the problems have been taken care of. If you're having any problems with the stream, just please put it into the chat so that I can see it when I look back at this stream into the chat to make sure. Now, this is crazy, you guys. 4 years ago, we decoded the Bird Box movie, and I could not believe what I was seeing. This is it right here, and I'm going to play a little bit of this for you, because even back then, when we decoded the Bird Box movie with Sandra Bullock, it was all about sound. Watch. Blindness. And our entire reality lives in a chorus of octave elements, a symphony of harmonics, spoken by the very voice of God, and settling into self-organizing shapes and structures. The fingerprint of God. Proof that all is in balance because of Him. He is the great conductor of the orchestra. You see, very little separates one element from another. It only takes a slight change in the atomic number and weight to yield completely different properties. This is the structure of our reality. But what does it all mean? Well, films like this represent mind control programming to retell the holy things into something much darker without your knowledge. And shows like this can reach millions of people. So, there you heard it from 4 years ago. The symphony of creation, sematics, and relating that to Bird Box. Before we ever had discovered the syrinx vocal organ of a bird. Now we're going to break this down today. Today will be another special show just to break down exactly what all this means. We're going to get into the anatomical structure of the reptiles. We're going to look at birds as well. We're going to look at the temple of Syrinx. So, Bird Box was really about sound, wasn't it? As the characters had to listen carefully as they were blindfolded. They could only hear these creatures that were coming after them. But if they looked upon them, then they would be killed by the creature. So let me try to help you understand this. The devil wants to be like the Most High, doesn't he? So he's going to attempt to use sound and injections to alter creation into his image. The same way God uses sound to create creation, the enemy will take that sound pipe, that hollow needle, as well as some kind of sound component, some kind of frequency component, to do the same, to alter creation into his image. Now, reptiles, most of them have actually lost their ability to vocalize, to truly vocalize. And this is interesting because if you think about this, the serpent in the garden was able to speak to Eve, wasn't he? But then he was cursed to lick the dust and go on his belly. But look at these vocal structures here of these snakes. Let's pull this up here. This is actually snake vocal structures. This is the voice box of the snake. Let's zoom this up. And as you can see the trachea of these snakes here. Here's a good image of it here. Another one here. And the only thing a snake has, they don't have a true vocal box, but they have these folds and concentric rings in their trachea and throat area. Look at this. Now I want you to take special note of these concentric stacked rings. Now these are images of lizards. So we're looking at all these different reptiles. And here you also see the concentric stacked rings. It's a column of rings. And as these rings constrict, they produce these utterings of sound in this study. Now I'll put links to this study for everybody. But the rings are what modulate the sound. Now, birds also have a similar structure, except their structure splits at the bottom. So it forms an inverted letter Y, capital letter Y. Now we can take this concentric stack of rings up a level in scale, can't we? We can take these concentric rings up a level in the nested reality. When we think about a bird, for instance, and their throat organ, the syrinx, which was the word from which syringe came from. So we have the sound and the injection. The two are one. Well, I'm going to go back into the chat here, and we're going to do a little Q&A, because I know some of you know the answer to this. It's super, super early. But, yeah, please hit the thumbs up, you guys, and make sure we're okay. They're early. Okay, so make sure that there's no problems with the stream. Okay, good. Yes, we are an hour early. There's thunderstorms rolling in. You can hear the thunder building. Wanted to get this show up before we got interrupted midstream if I were to do the show later. Okay, let's do a little Q&A. Think about the birds in their column of rings in their throat with branches. And I want you to go up a scale in the nested reality. I want you to go up a scale in the nested reality. Remember, it's things within things, right? So, what is the next larger column of branched rings if we scale up outside of the bird? Let's see who gets it. What is the next larger scale outside of the bird's throat? The column of stacked rings. Let's see who gets it. All right, there you go. Lambrou got it. Trees. Isn't that amazing? A tree is a stack of rings with branches, just like the throat vocal organ of a bird. And where do birds live? Inside of trees. It's the nested reality. Amazing. Things within things, Russian dolls. Now, we know that the serpent spoke in the garden, didn't we? But its ability to speak was removed, wasn't it? He was cursed to lick the dust and go on its belly. Now, this study here that I have pulled up, it follows with increasing complexity the different reptiles. So as you move down through the study, the complexity of the vocal organ increases. They go from lizards to, I think, turtles. This one is lizards. Let's keep going here. This one is crocodiles. So then it goes to crocodiles. Let me show you here. Again, there's your stacked trachea rings, the rings of the tree. Then it goes down to, what is this? More anatomy. More anatomy. And down here to turtles. You're going to see turtles. And each of these different animals, each of these different reptiles has increasing complexity. They can do more sounds. So this is a turtle voice box. And then it gets all the way to the bottom. And the reptile with the most advanced ability to make sounds is a gecko. And the gecko actually has real vocal cords. And they go on to explain how the gecko is able to make more complex sounds. So I'll put a link to this study for those of you that are interested. There's lots of really cool diagrams of the progression of this vocal box of reptiles. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because I told you to remember the stack of rings. And Rush, the band, made a song on the 2112 album. The song is called The Temple of Syrinx. This is it right here. And look at this artwork. You can see the concentric ring circles, the same ones that we saw in the throat of the reptile and the throat of the bird. It matches the anatomy, a stacked column of rings. Now, why is this weird? Well, why would they name a song after a reptile's voice box? Now, there's some very bizarre lyrics behind this song, talking about the priests of the temples of Syrinx ruling the world in 2112. And I wonder if the temples of Syrinx was about how musicians use sound to hypnotically control humanity. Rush was known as having a very high-pitched voice. The lead singer had a very high-pitched voice. And I used to be a huge fan of Rush when I was in high school. I had a friend with an old Chevy Nova, and we would drive around and listen to Rush blasting out the windows and the little speakers in the back of the window, driving back and forth to school in high school. Rush has been around for a very long time. And now I'm realizing that these people were basically disclosing really creepy stuff about the future of the world. The Syrinx. Now, there are lots of links to the Syrinx and 5G frequency, millimeter waves, like little tweets. And we did shows telling you and showing you that the 5G millimeter waves make an audible tweeting or chirping sound in the ears of some people. The two most definitely have to be connected. Now, here's another version of the artwork. Oh, actually, this is actually the Syrinx bird anatomy. Let me show you this first. Look at this. The column of stacked rings. Now, in the bird, they branch off. And this organ right here is the actual voice box of the bird box. Now, here is some artwork from the Temple of Syrinx, and many of you will recognize this false god. As far as I can tell, this is the Hindu god, Vishruvana. And we just covered this, didn't we, in a Blacklist episode in which Raymond Reddington talks about Vishruvana. And Vishruvana wields an actual umbrella. Here, now I want you to look at the hat of this Rush album cover. And here's a picture of Vishruvana with his hat as well. Very similar, wielding an umbrella. Now I couldn't confirm for sure if this image from the Rush album cover was Vishruvana, but it looks an awful lot like him, doesn't it? Wielding this object, which doesn't exactly look like an umbrella, but it kind of does. Now, what is this about? Well, if we are to take Rush at their word that the Temple of Syrinx is a syringe, then it would make sense that an umbrella, which we already know as a syringe, would be what this false god is holding. Vishruvana, wielding an umbrella, wielding a needle, a hollow needle, a reed, a syrinx, sound and injection. Now, what makes this even more weird is that the artist that made this cover, his name is Pale Horse. This dovetails exactly into what we were studying about the injection. Remember all the videos we did about sound and white horses? There were a couple movies that we did, that we decoded, about people losing their sense of sound, losing their senses, and there was this white horse. The scepter of Vishruvana. Now, what else could this scepter represent? Well, this scepter could also represent somatic frequencies. Somatic frequencies that manifest geometric shapes. Like this. Which is exactly what we're talking about in the Bird Box. The somatic manifestation of the frequencies of God. Look at this. These shapes, these geometric shapes, actually manifested out of sound frequencies. All you do is put a loose medium like sand or sugar onto a soundboard, and you run the sound through the board, and it manifests into these perfect geometric shapes, kind of like the geometric shapes that manifest in snowflakes. The patterns affecting, or the sounds affecting the ice crystals and self-organizing them into these shapes. There has to be a frequency behind that. That's the life frequency seen through the lens of the hex, right? Wow. Now, I'll leave you with this. Many of you noticed that the flux capacitor from Back to the Future also has the syrinx shape, the inverted Y, the vocal bird box, the vocal organ of the bird box. This is Doc Brown, of course, from Back to the Future. And our first look at the flux capacitor is after Doc Brown, in the movie, explains to Marty the day he invented time travel. The 5th of November, 1955. Now, this is right out of the movie. The 5th of November is when he invented time travel. Now, I want you to listen closely because this is crazy. As the thunder rolls in the background. Unbelievable. Well, I think we got in just in time before this thunderstorm rolled in. Let me make sure you guys are with me, and we'll continue on with the 5th of November. Good morning. Now, if you're just tuning in, we started early because a storm was coming in. So if you're having any streaming problems, I did make some adjustments to the stream to try to help more people tune into the stream. So please Just make sure that it's good, and if it's not good, put something in the comments if you're having any problems tuning into the stream. All right, let's keep going here. The 5th of November is when Doc Brown discovered time travel, and he explains this to Marty in a particular scene. And he explains that he discovered time travel and the flux capacitor while sitting on a toilet. He actually slipped off of a toilet. And I began to think of this. The 5th of November is a time travel date that we had discovered, isn't it? It is the satanic Samhain festival, when the portals open in rings through human sacrifice. And as I begin to think about this and break this down even further, I realized that the toilet was significant. A dirty, unclean, swirling portal to the swamp sewer. This is what they were talking about. This is what they meant. It's the same thing we saw in the Shining movie with the woman in the shower. The whole point of that was the swirling drain. Now here's the flux capacitor, of course. And as you can see here, it is the vocal organ of the bird. It is the syrinx. And this is what all this was all about all the time. And then another revelation happened. Syrinx is flux. Syrinx is flux. What do you mean, Casey? Well, what is flux? It's the word flu, X. Flu, X. The X is the mark. So flux really means the mark of the flu. There goes the rain. And how is the mark administered? By the syrinx, by the syringe. This is unbelievable. Now, you'll remember that Biff's... Oh, here it comes. Let's give this a second here before we continue on as I read the chat. It's loud. X marks the spot. Exactly, David. Can you guys hear that? All right. Anybody having any problems? Sound is lagging. Sound is lagging a bit. All right. Well, I'll fix that. Yeah, that's just the rain. That's the rain coming in. Is the sound down, or is just because I had to pause because of the rain? Okay. No issues for some of you. I'm just stopping because I don't want the rain to drown out what we're trying to say. So I'm in the chat here. Yeah, it's going to be muffled for a bit. It's the rain, you guys. Yeah, it sounds like static, doesn't it? All right. Let's try to finish up the show here. And we might have to break this up into a second show because it might come down even harder. Okay, so you guys can hear it. Keep going. Now, this is important because if you think about this, remember, Biff found an almanac, didn't he? And he got rich off of knowing the future. Well, the word almanac is all man AC, all man ac. And that could be translated into all man antichrist, can't it? And it makes you wonder what that is about. Now, I got a couple headlines, and then I have some surprise footage from the Honey Milk Ranch And we'll cut off the show there just because I think the range is only going to get worse before it gets better. Many of you will remember this woman. I wanted to do a follow-up show on this. The woman on the plane who said she saw someone who was not human. And she accused them of not being real. Well, apparently the airline pressed charges against her. They identified who she was for disrupting the flight. But here's the question. Why won't they identify anybody who, this person who she was actually talking to and saying that they weren't real? Why are they all focused on the woman and not, whoa, the power just almost went out. Why are they focused on that and not what they should be focused on, which is the person she accused of not being real? That is my question. All right, you guys, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better, so I'm going to show you this footage of this paper wasp. Not a paper wasp, a wasp that carries grass. Look at this.
What is that thing doing? It's a fly with a hornet with a giant piece of like straw or something. What is it doing? Oh.
Isn't that cool?
What are you doing?
That's a paper or a wasp who carries
Trying to find an opening.
pieces of grass, and he was building a nest up here above my window. Wow, so I identified this, and it's actually a grass-carrying wasp. Look at this. It's actually a real thing. Now, these are pollinators, so I'm going to try to leave this wasp alone, because, well, look how neat. I never knew there was such a thing. I looked out my window, and I saw a piece of grass just floating around in front of my window. And I was like, oh, boy, what is that? And I got a really cool surprise after I grabbed my camera. All right, you guys. Well, we're going to end the show there. It looks like we squeezed it in just in time. There wasn't really much else to report. There was a cancer cluster in Washington State, but this is confined to missile silo workers. Hundreds of cases of cancer in Montana nuclear silos and the people that work in them. So if you're around any of these nuclear silos, be on the lookout for that as well. All right, you guys. I guess the other people are going to have to catch this stream later. I love each and every one of you. And I guess my rain barrel is going to fill up. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Take care and be safe.